you everyone for joining us here today. The attendees have kind of slowed down, or people joining us has kind of slowed down. So we'll go ahead and get started. But in the chat, let us know how your New Year's resolutions have been going. We're 12 days in. So hopefully you guys are keeping up with it. But if not, we also support you with that. So let us know if you're keeping up with it or not. We'll go ahead and get started. So today you have myself. I'm the VP of Marketing here at SupplyPike. I help with a lot of the stuff with Supplier Wiki, helped create the website and lead these webinars. And then we have Stacy Tan, who she is going to be our leading us through the content here today. So she has over a decade's worth of experience in the supply chain supplier world. She's worked on all sides of the table. So she also has led like the product development for retail insights products. So she is very, very, very familiar with Retail Link. So we are super excited to have her here today to answer any questions that you guys may have on what recipes you need in Retail Link and all of that fun stuff. So today we are going to be going over Retail Link's DSS. That's going to be kind of a basic introductory, what is it? And then we're going to be going through actual reports that you can be building in DSS and how you can actually use those reports to gain insight into your Walmart business. Then we're going to be doing a Q&A. We actually had a lot of questions that were submitted before this webinar. So we're going to be getting through those, and then any questions that you submit throughout, we will also be trying to answer them as we can, but reserving that time at the end. And then if you guys are curious, what is SupplyPike? What do you do? How can you help me? We're going to be doing a little bonus demo at the end, covering all of that. So hopefully you guys can stay on for that if you have any questions. Perfect. So FAQs, will we get a copy of the slide deck? Yes, you will. We will be sending the slide deck as well as the recording in 3 to 4 business days after today. So, we know that you guys probably have a lot of questions and want to have a better understanding of all of this. So don't feel like you have to take screenshots or anything like that. We'll be sending it all to you. The next thing is, what is the best way to ask a question? So down at the bottom, you're going to see 2 little chat bubbles that say Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You're going to be clicking on that and type any questions that you have into the Q&A. That's the best way to ask a question. That makes sure that we're able to see everything that's coming in and knock anything out that we've been able to answer. But if you just want to chat and share insights and talk to your fellow attendees, please feel free to use the chat, which is the single little bubble down at the bottom that says chat. That's the best way to kind of have a conversation with the other people who are in this webinar. But Q&A is going to be the easiest way for us to kind of answer questions, especially whenever we have a large volume like we usually do in this webinar. So perfect. All right. And who is SupplyPike? This is where I'm going to hand it off to you, Stacy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melody. So welcome, everybody. So excited to have you guys here today. We always like to start with a really quick introduction on who SupplyPike is, just in case this may be your first time coming to a webinar with us. So really quickly, we are a Northwest Arkansas-based software company. And what we do is we create cloud-based tools to help our CPG partners reduce their revenue loss. So we really play in the revenue management space, and we do our best to basically help our teams kind of automatically detect and resolve any retailer compliance issues. So things like deductions, OTIF, and very soon we're going to be exploring the world of SQEP as well. So we used to be in Fayetteville. We just moved up to Rogers. So if you guys are in the Bentonville, Rogers area and want to swing by and hang out with us, please come. We'd love to have you, host you, let you guys see the new space. We're really excited about it. And then just so you guys know, we work with over 400 different CPGs, representing about $25 billion in retail impact across pretty much every product category across the box. So obviously we are in Northwest Arkansas, so kind of our bread and butter is Walmart and Sam's Club, but we actually do also support Target, Kroger, and Amazon deductions and compliance issues. So if you guys have any pain points with any of those retailers, we're your folks. We're happy to help and answer questions and help however we can. All righty. So we are going to go ahead and dive into the content. As Melody mentioned, if you guys have any questions along the way, please feel free to use the Q&A function and we'll make sure we get to those questions. And just to kind of give you guys a little bit of, context and preface for today, this is going to be a little bit more of a 101 type course around Retail Link's DSS. So, if you guys are new to Walmart and got your very first SKU, congratulations, you're in for a whirlwind of like a lot. It's going to be some highs, some lows, but we're happy to help along the way. Or maybe you guys have done business with Walmart for a really long time and are just wanting to get a refresher course on DSS, maybe learn a couple of tips and tricks. I know, like Melody said, I've been doing this for 10 years, which don't ask how old I am. And I am still learning new stuff with DSS like all the time. So again, welcome either way. If you guys have any questions, like we said, feel free to ask us. But again, this is going to be a little bit more of kind of a 101 type course. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into it. So Retail Link has an application called the Decision Support System. And essentially it is Walmart's reporting application. So you can really think of it as kind of their database for pretty much all data that concerns your business with them. So one thing I want to point out really quickly is that this is only going to allow you to see access into your own data. We get questions sometimes where we're like, hey, can I see how my competitors are doing and things like that. That data does exist. There are ways to get it, but within Retail Link's DSS, it's really going to be your own data within Walmart. So essentially it allows users, it's very much like a query system. So it allows users to essentially build queries from scratch, and it'll spit out, basically an Excel spreadsheet for you based on how you've built that query. So it'll have information around item performance. It'll have some pipeline information. It'll have forecast information and things like that. And we're going to walk through how you can utilize DSS to basically get to those types of data. So in case you guys, again, are newer to the space, maybe have not used DSS before, essentially all you have to do when you log into Retail Link is you should be able to click on an apps tab at the top of the screen. And if you type in Decision Support New, you'll find that app and then you should be able to access it from there. Every Retail Link account pretty much should have access to DSS. If you don't for any reason, I would recommend reaching out to your Retail Link admin. Usually they're the ones that kind of kickstarted the account for you. And if your Retail Link admin doesn't have access for any reason, which sometimes happens, it's Walmart, you should be able to reach out to the Retail Link help desk and they'll be able to get you access. So one kind of pro tip for you guys is, so when you are on that apps page and you find that Decision Support New tile, so to speak, there should be a star next to it. If you click on that star button, you'll favorite DSS. And then anytime you log into the homepage, and this works for any application in DSS, but once you get on the homepage, then it will automatically show up in a list of your favorite apps and you're not going to have to search for it every single time. So I get a lot of questions, a lot on like, who should be in DSS? Who should be looking at DSS? Usually speaking, I'm generalizing kind of heavily because obviously every business, every category is going to be different. But generally speaking, if you fall into a sales or replenishment function, generally, you are going to, be logging into DSS all the time. So sales, replenishment, kind of CPFR, that world, you should really get to know DSS, learn how to build queries. It's clunky, I won't lie to you, but it is very powerful and it can usually get you the data you need, albeit sometimes a little bit slowly. So if you guys are following along at home or at the office and you just want to see what it looks like, basically when you click on Decision Support New, you should land on a page that looks like this. So you'll see kind of across the left-hand side, kind of the different countries and the different divisions that are available to you. As a general rule, 95% of you guys are probably, just going to need the United States, and the division is going to be Walmart stores. You used to have a little bit more flexibility. So for example, you used to be able to pull Sam's Club data out of DSS. Walmart has since firewalled that data and you have to go through, use an application called Madrid. So you're no longer able to access Sam's Club data from DSS. They still make it available on dropdown. But again, 95% of you guys are probably just going to need US Walmart stores. So utilizing or creating a DSS report is actually pretty easy. You guys can see here kind of across, again, the left-hand side of the screen, there's going to be a bunch of what they call templates, and I'll show you guys what that looks like in a second. It's a little bit of a, I would say, kind of mislabeling calling these templates, because in my mind, when I see the word template, I think, oh, you've already pre-built the report for me. But that is not how Walmart looks at DSS queries. So when they're looking at templates, they more look at it from the type of columns that they make available for you. So for example, if you're looking at sales and margin templates, it's only going to give you columns that are really kind of pertaining to anything that falls under sales and margin. Walmart.com will give you columns and data that pertain to Walmart.com, so on and so forth. So again, these are called the templates, and they will help you in getting an idea of building out what columns you need as you're trying to create the query. So just so you guys can see, we kind of double clicked into one of these folders. You guys should be able to, again, access all of these and kind of click into all of them and see. So you can see things like store detail, company summary, sell-through reporting, so on and so forth. As a general rule, again, and you guys can kind of see here, it seems like a lot of stuff, but really, as we mentioned here, just a handful of templates are going to get you what you need, I would say 85 to 90% of the time. So myself personally, I pretty much only live in about 4 or 5 templates. And again, if I ever need additional information, it's there for me. But if not, again, 85, 90% of the time, what I need is going to be in usually like store detail, company summary, so Walmart.com templates, and scorecards. And again, we're going to walk you guys through all of these different templates so you have an idea of what they look like. So one question that we do get asked quite a bit, so Walmart rolled out, I don't know if I would call this a feature, but something last year where essentially if you're not utilizing templates within a certain period of time, I believe it's 90 days, essentially they kind of erase that template from your DSS access. And so it's, for again, 85, 90% of people, it's not going to matter because the templates that you need, you're going to be using daily or weekly. But there are some times when you'll need this one random template for line reviews or something like that. And you're like, oh, I only use it once a year or twice a year. Where did it go? So a couple of pro tips for you guys. You can actually use the search function and search for those templates. So really great example of one is like future traded store template. I would only ever use that when I had mod drops. So again, like once, twice a year. So if it doesn't show up kind of in your general template folder, you can always utilize the search function, look for it there. If you're not able to find it with your search function, you can actually reach out again to the Retail Link help desk and they can reactivate it for you. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up there. Again, missing templates, not uncommon nowadays since Walmart introduced that new feature. But again, you should be able to kind of get those back, either searching for them or reaching out to the Retail Link help desk. Okay, so I kind of wanted to walk you guys through the anatomy of a DSS query. So again, kind of 101 type stuff, but really, how do you build a DSS query? And we kind of want to give you guys this context because once we head into the next screen, you're going to see a lot of data and you're going to be like, I see why we're using this framework to kind of think about it. So, kind of the first thing that you want to do is really think about a specific business question that you're trying to answer. So as an example, what are the sales for my items by store, by item for the last 13 weeks? So what type of data are you trying to pull? With DSS, you can technically pull just kind of a general purpose query where you select all the columns and things like that, but you will get a lot of data back and it will take a long time to process. So usually we recommend kind of thinking about the framework for what you're trying to pull so that when you are walking through the query wizard, you're able to say, okay, understanding my business question, these are the different columns and timeframes and items that I need to pick. So once you kind of understand what type of business question you're trying to answer, then it comes down to choosing the correct template like we talked about. So if I'm trying to get store level data, I'm going to make sure that I'm pulling store detail information, but maybe I don't need item by store by day information. Maybe I just need a roll up for my company. I can use a company summary template, so on and so forth. And then from there, you then essentially create or complete the report template. So again, we'll walk you guys through an example of what that looks like so you understand kind of what we're talking about. So as we mentioned earlier, the process to build any DSS report query is going to be the same, but you're going to have access to different columns just depending on the type of template that you've chosen. Okay, so I'm going to kind of move on to talking about completing the report templates and really what that looks like from like a practical standpoint. So as you're ready to, answer this question, what are my sales by items by store? This is how you can actually go about building that query. Okay. So in this particular example, we've decided to kind of build a store level query. So Walmart's retail link actually has the ability to give you data granularity by item, by store, by day. So I'm kind of generalizing that a little bit. There are going to be different types of metrics where you can only get it weekly, like a forecast, for example. But things like sales, pipeline, so you're on hands, in store, in transit, at the warehouse, you're in stocks, things like that, you will be able to get by day. And so give you guys a context. So if you really want to know how did my cell phone case do in store 100, which is in Bentonville yesterday, you can get that level of granularity with DSS. And again, you can roll that all the way up to how did my company do last week or whatever it is. So when you click into the store detail template, because again, we want to get store level information, you're going to see the report wizard and it looks like this. Again, we'll go through kind of every page, but essentially you're going to start with columns. There'll be columns, items, locations, times, options, and then you submit. And basically you're going to start on the columns page. So the columns tab is exactly what it sounds like. Depending on what type of columns you select, that is basically going to be your column data across the top. So you guys can see here, we've just picked an example just so you guys could see. So you'll see kind of all of these folders that will show up. You can expand into each of these folders and essentially search for the type of data that you need. And you'll be able to see things like prime item number, prime item description, POS quantity, POS sales, what is my current store on hand quantity, and what is my current in stock. Kind of a pro tip for you guys is you can actually right click on any of these column names and DSS will tell you kind of what the definition of that column is. For certain columns, they'll even tell you how they calculate it. So things like your in stock percentage, you'll be able to see, because there's current in stock, there's replenishment in stock, there's historical in stock, and they'll be able to tell you kind of how they're calculating it. So when you're looking at the data and interpreting the data, you understand how Walmart is calculating these numbers. One pro tip that I want to share with you guys is really try utilize the search function as much as you can. Now, obviously, if you're brand new to this, you don't know what you don't know. So you're, in the beginning, you're probably going to have to deep dive into a lot of these different folders to understand kind of what columns are available to you. But over time, as you get into the data more and more, really utilize the search function. Walmart does not have a very good way of kind of just displaying all the columns that are available. So sometimes you will have to find stuff that is like 4 folders deep. And if you're trying to build a 20 column spreadsheet and half of them are four folders deep, it can get extremely tedious. So really get to know the search function. And I'm going to show you guys some pro tips later on as well into how you can like save templates so that you're not having to recreate them every time. So if you have a sales data query that you're using every week, you don't have to rebuild it all the time. And again, we'll kind of show you guys what that looks like a little bit down the road. Okay, so after you've selected the columns, from there, you can kind of think of it like a funnel, right? So you're going to start with your columns. What type of data are you trying to pull back? Then you kind of go a little bit further down the funnel to say, okay, what type of items am I trying to search for this for? Unfortunately, again, beauty and pain of DSS is extremely powerful. So you can have all the data in the world, But what that means is you also have to know how to segment and build out and think through how to filter down all the data in the world. So when you go to the items page, it's going to look almost exactly like the columns page, a whole bunch of different filters, but essentially, or folders rather, but essentially what you're trying to do is basically tell DSS what items are you trying to pull this data back for. So are you trying to pull for a specific item number? Are you trying to pull for a department? Are you trying to pull for your specific buyer? And again, remember how we talked about the framework on how you build a query, kind of refer back to that. So what is your buyer asking for? And then kind of build your query based off of that. So we kind of called it out here, but generally speaking, I would say again, 85–90% of the time, filters is where you're going to want to go. And then from there, again, you're going to see basically all the different ways you can filter the item out. So really common ones are like by item number, department number, buyer ID, things like that. So again, just depending on what you're trying to accomplish, that is usually how you're going to do it. So pro tip for you guys, if you're trying to pull your full book of business, without filters, the easiest way that I have found to do that is utilizing a fine line filter. And basically, so fine line is kind of if you think of item as kind of like the lowest common or lowest possible denominator, fine line is kind of one level-ish above that. And so if Walmart assigns fine lines to all of your item numbers. So if you look for a fine line greater than 0000, basically it's going to pull all items back for you. So rather than you having to go in and be like, wait, what are those 6 item numbers that I have or whatever it is, or what's that buyer ID again? You can do it by your vendor number. So that's possible too. But fine line greater than 0000 is most of the time going to be able to get you what you need. Yeah, so there are other kind of nuances around item selection. So things like linked items, activity level. So that's kind of a 201 question, because you will have situations where items are like cross-referenced, where you have assortment. So you have a parent item number and a baby item number. And we'll be happy to answer questions for those after today. If you guys are like, what does all of this mean? We're happy to answer those questions. But yeah, so you're going to start with your columns, filter it down to your items. And then, so from there, hey, I know what type of data I want. I know what items I want to pull this for. Then you're going to go to locations. And again, surprise, surprise, you can filter out your data by location type. So, again, 85–90% of the time, you're going to utilize basically the stores function, and you're going to look for all stores, because that's usually what the queries are for. I tend to recommend pulling more data back than you need, because you can always filter down within Excel. It becomes a little bit more complicated and a little bit more annoying if, let's say, you are, I only want to look for this specific store, and you pull a query that way. But then obviously, we all know how it goes. You see data for this and you're like, oh, wait, but how does it compare to this store, for example? And then you wouldn't want to go in and basically have to recreate a query all over again for a different store instead this time. So to me, I prefer to be very specific with my columns, but then be very general with my items and be as general as possible with my locations, because I can always filter and sort within Excel. It's a lot faster for you to do that than for you to utilize Retail Link and have to rebuild queries from scratch all the time. Yeah, so as you guys can kind of see here, again, just different ways for you to filter location information down. You can do it by store. Some people do it by warehouse. So if you're, for example, type 20 item and your items live in the warehouse, you want to understand your safety stock levels and things like that, you would do it at warehouse level. If you want to understand your sales data, usually you do it by store level, so on and so forth. And then from there, you kind of get into your time selection. So this is, basically how Walmart looks at data. So one thing I want to point out for you guys, again, if you're newer to this space, Walmart utilizes a completely different calendar than the rest of the, world, because it's Walmart, and I say that with love. But they look at things, essentially their fiscal year starts in February. Their weeks start on Saturday and end on Friday. That is how they look at data. So when you are looking at things like Walmart month and Walmart week, you have to understand that your thinking, and you're going to be pulling data back in there, basically how they look at time. So we do actually have a free Walmart calendar that we just, I think, released last week or something like that for the fiscal year 2024. And Walmart uses, they talk in fiscal year end 2024 because their year starts in February and ends in January of next year. So when you see FYE 2024, they're actually referring to 2023. I know it's a lot, but essentially very similar thing. You're going to think through what type of timing am I looking for? Again, by week, by month, whatever it is. Walmart does utilize something called fuzzy dates. You guys can see here that the most popular option is the fuzzy dates option. And what it is basically rolling time periods. So you can look at things like current week, last 4, last 13, fiscal year to date, so on and so forth. So rather than you having to go last 4 weeks, what date is that to what date, you can just say, show me your last 4 weeks. But then keep in mind, anytime you're pulling this data, it's going to look at that rolling data. So if I pull it today, it's going to look at the last 4 weeks. When I pull it next week, it's going to look at this week and the preceding 3 weeks, so on and so forth. So just be aware of that. One other thing to call out for you guys is there are a bunch of different time ranges. This can be really powerful when you're trying to do comparison, when you're trying to compare data ranges. So essentially you can say time range 1, last week, time range 2, last 4 weeks, time range 3, last 13 weeks of the quarter, time range 4, fiscal year to date, for example. So you can pull all your sales back for those 4 time ranges all at once. And usually how that's going to look is it's going to go across. So it'll say like range 1 POS, range 2 POS, range 3 POS, so on and so forth. Now, one pro tip again for you guys is that when you do get these Excel spit out of the report, let's say you do utilize time ranges, it's not going to tell you what the time range was. It will be kind of, they give you the recipe, so to speak, at the top of the query or your Excel spreadsheet, but in the actual columns, it won't say. So I have always it's best practice. If you remember, time range 1 is last week, time range 2 is last 4 weeks, rename those columns when you get them in Excel. Because if not, you're going to spend half the time building pivots and doing things like that and being like, wait, what was range 1 again? And having to refer to the recipe. Save yourself the heartache, rename your columns. You'll thank me later for it. Okay, so from there, after you have kind of selected, all your columns, items, locations, times, I'd say 99% of the time you can ignore the options tab. I've done this for a really long time. I don't think I have ever utilized the options tab. If anyone has, please feel free to sound off in the chat, but you probably can safely skip that. And then from there, essentially, you can start to submit the query. So you can title, rename your report if you want to, keep this as browser, because that will actually give you a download for you to download and then open in Excel. Usually, again, 85–90% of the time, Excel or Excel 2007 are going to be all you need. We have some teams that utilize giant databases, and then they'll utilize things like Access or whatever it is. But if you guys are just doing run-of-the-mill reports, Excel or Excel 2007 should work just fine. The difference, truly the only difference between these two that I have seen is that Excel 2007 allows you to pull back data, more data, basically. So if you're pulling a big query back and you utilize Excel, which is the default option, it'll actually cut off, it'll truncate at the bottom of as many rows as Excel will allow you to go. And then it'll actually, it's really weird, start from row 1 and give you the remaining data. So it'll overwrite. It's not great. So I always recommend Excel 2007, regardless of the size of query. It's just going to, one less thing that you have to worry about. You can choose to schedule the reporting if you want to. If you hit none, essentially it'll just be a one-time query. It'll spit out and that'll be it. If you schedule it weekly, monthly, quarterly, you can do that. And basically it'll just, show up in your actual DSS. And then if you do decide to schedule it, you can essentially choose what days you want it to run, and then you can pick an expiration date for the scheduled report, so on and so forth. So a couple of things to keep in mind are essentially how and when Walmart updates their data, because forecasts will be updated on different times. Sales is daily, forecast is every Sunday and Wednesday, and things like that. They'll restate data. So don't be too surprised if, as you guys are pulling certain metrics. So things like you expect to change daily, your pipeline, your sales, your in-stock, Obviously, that's going to change every single day. Things like forecasts may change over the time of the week because they will restate data based on kind of all of the different elements that DSS is looking at. So knowing when they restate their data, you'll be able to kind of get, quote unquote, the most accurate forecast as you can. Okay, so from there, once you hit the submit button, essentially you kick that off to DSS. You'll be able to hit the status button, which is on kind of the home page of DSS, and you'll see essentially all of the queries that you've run. So there are a lot of different statuses that will be available to you. So waiting basically means it's in the queue. Active means that, you know, DSS is actively working on it. Formatting, so they've pulled the data back and now they're formatting it into Excel for you. And then if it's done, then you should be able to click on that and actually download that page. DSS, I'll admit, has been pretty snappy lately. So usually I can get queries back in 5 to 10 minutes. But again, it really depends on the size of the query. So I've also run queries where, and I'm sure many of you veterans will know, it can be 4 to 6 to 8 hours. So it can be kind of painful. And one thing to also note for DSS is they actually don't let you know when a report is done. So again, to those of you guys who've been doing it a long time like me, you know, you just kind of keep DSS open while you work on other things and check back periodically to be like, is my report done? Can I download it? So on and so forth. There will be times when sometimes you'll get like a user error, Cartesian error, or things like that, system error. And you can click on those errors and they'll sometimes tell you what's going on with the query. And then if you need to modify it, you can click here. You guys can see, you can click on a report, hit the modify button and try to modify it to kind of get rid of that error. What is not great is that you basically don't know that there's an error until the report comes back. So there are times when you'll run a report, you know, and 4 hours later come back and it'll say user error and you're like, oh my gosh. So again, if you're newer to this space, I always recommend kind of building 3 or 4 reports and or report 3 or 4 different ways, like trying different filters and things like that, so that, you know, at least one of them will hit. And you don't need to worry about it having a user error and now you have to start from scratch and wait, you know, another hour or whatever it is. Again, as you guys get more and more into the data, you know what will work and what won't work. And then you're not going to waste your time with that sort of stuff. And sometimes you get system errors just because it's Walmart. So it is hit or miss sometimes, but again, the more you try and set yourself up for success, the less heartache you will have down the road. Okay, so moving on to talking about some popular DSS report templates. So as I kind of mentioned, you know, I want to walk you guys through really quickly some easy examples. You guys can kind of think of this as like the foundation. Feel free to add on columns or take away columns that you think are maybe not super relevant for you. I think this is, if you've never pulled a DSS report, this is really great, like homework. So we'll actually tell you what columns to pull and what items and what timeframes and things like that. And then you should be able to kind of, you know, get something back. And then again, start to mess around with, you know, what happens if I add this column or take away this column, etc. Unfortunately, and we get a lot of questions about this, Walmart is not great at giving education around like the tactical use of DSS. So if you guys have any questions, you know, Supply Pike is always there. We're happy to answer questions. We do it for free. Obviously, we're not, you know, consultants or anything like that, so we can't necessarily give you business direction. But if you're just like, hey guys, what does this column mean? Or why can't I get this report to work? We're happy to answer those kinds of questions. Also, if you're not part of the Walmart Supplier Support Group on Facebook, I highly recommend it. It's like 11,000 suppliers on there, or like people from suppliers. And people are asking questions all the time and getting great answers, great, you know, just research and resources. And then also shameless plug for Supplier Wiki. So if you guys are at this webinar, you probably came here from Supplier Wiki, so you probably already know. But if you don't, it is actually a 100% free resource that Supply Pike provides. So we give articles, resources, ebooks, you know, on how to utilize DSS and just Retail Link as a whole. So Okay, that's kind of side tangent. Back into talking about the reports. So company summary report template is basically, you can get item level performance metrics, but not at the store level. So I can understand how item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is performing and see how it's contributing to my numbers overall. You guys can see here, we recommend that this is a minimum level of visibility that you should consider. So obviously, if you guys are doing a really, quick and dirty line review report where I just want to know what I sold as a company last week, definitely you can always pull that. But again, the more information you're able to pull, the more nuance of analysis you're able to do, with the data that you have. So as Melodie mentioned, you guys are going to get a copy of this report, so and slide deck. So don't worry about having to, take notes or anything like that. But this is an example of, the columns that we would recommend pulling. So you'll get item information, you'll get POS. So this is your actual sales quantity and sales. So how DSS looks at it, POS quantity is your actual units sold and POS sales is your dollars sold. You're going to get ship information. So how much did you ship to Walmart? It's good to know your ship versus sales, so you understand kind of what is your sell through. So proportionally speaking, are you selling? What rate are you selling at? We also included metrics on your pipeline. So what is on hand, what is in transit from the DC to the store, what is in warehouse, so at Walmart's DC, what is on order, so what has Walmart ordered from you, but maybe you've not shipped to them yet, and then understanding kind of your store counts as well as your in stock. So having this kind of quote unquote basic information will help you answer a lot of questions. So what is performance doing? Do we have a healthy pipeline? How is our in stock? Do we have enough product on the shelf? And from here, you kind of use it as a diving, kind of a deep dive to then go, okay, I'm starting to see, trends or things that don't look right or I'm worried about. And then you can start to build more queries based off of this information. So from there, again, columns and then items, and then time ranges. So items, I would recommend pulling, again, you can do find line greater than 0000, or you can pull it at your 6-digit vendor number. Either way is going to get you all of your items. Well, I say that. One reason why I like find line greater than 0000 is because if you have item share, which is a whole other concept and a whole other story, but if you guys are shipping, for example, through Core-Mark or McLean, you will have item share. So they may not show up under a single 6-digit. So find line greater than 0000 is going to pull anything that you have within this particular retailing account. So vendor number, you guys know when you sign it with Walmart, you get a specific 6-digit vendor number. If that's all you're trying to pull back, then definitely you can utilize that and basically put in your 6-digit vendor number. And then your time range, you can choose. For this example, we did fiscal year to date. That's a really common way of looking at data. But again, you guys can do the same thing by last week, last 4 weeks, whatever it is to your heart's content. So this is what it's going to look like, right? So as we talked about, you've built your columns out. So these are all of the columns that we've listed here. They're going to go across. So your item number, item description, your POS data, your pipeline, your store counts, your replenishment in stocks, so on and so forth. And then these are the items that all fall under this 6-digit vendor number. So you guys can see here, item 72, 73, 25, so on and so forth. And you'll be able to basically see all of the data, kind of items down, columns across. So again, once you're in Excel, you can kind of filter, sort, roll up, pivot table, however you need to get the data that you need. And just so you guys know, this is basically the output of Retail-Link's DSS queries. So you don't get any sort of like charts or graphs or anything like that. It is a straight Excel sheet. And then, so a lot of teams will utilize this and kind of build, master reporting that feeds from these sheets or whatever it is. But this is essentially what it's going to look like no matter how you phrase the query. Okay, so that is the company summary report. The store detail report lets you get down to store level information. So company summary, you guys can see here, it's just going to be your item across your entire business. So item 72 across all stores sold 2,900 units. Your store detail report is going to let you see store level performance metrics. So item 72 in store 1 did this many POS quantity, this much POS sales, so on and so forth. Usually, most of the time, you're going to start with this kind of information. And then as we talked about, like, oh, this kind of looks crazy. Again, I'm making stories up, but like, oh, I have 0 on order right now. Why is that? What does that mean? Do all of my stores have sufficient inventory? So on and so forth. Then you can, again, use this as a jumping off point to then say, okay, I want to do a store detail report on item 72 to make sure that all of my stores have sufficient inventory. So one thing that is going to be different, so again, very similar. We're giving you guys a recipe here. It's got a lot of that same data, that POS, your gross ships, your pipeline. But one thing that's going to be different is we've added the store number to this. So we'll show you guys kind of what that looks like. You should be able to basically, again, pull that item store level data. So for me, I kind of cheat a little bit, and I always just default to store detail, because if you don't put store number in as a column, you're just going to get item level data. So it's going to look like this anyway. So again, as you kind of learn the shortcuts, I always almost exclusively use store detail, because it allows me to filter up to company summary anyway. So if that's a shortcut for you guys, more than welcome to use it. So you can utilize item numbers. So when you're looking at item store level detail, if you're going to pick store, I recommend trying to like not put in a bunch of item numbers, because think about like how it will grow exponentially. Because if, let's say, you're in 4,700 stores, national rollout, and you have 10 items, like that's going to be like whatever, 470,000 cells or whatever it is, because it's going to tell you item A store 1, item B store 1, item C store 1, and then it'll be like item A store 100, item B store 100, so on and so forth. So if you're looking at true store level data, I would recommend trying to keep the number of items that you're looking at to a minimum, because if not, it just explodes in data. So really, again, you'll learn kind of these shortcuts and ways to think about data. If you need item level information, then you can pull lots of items, because you're not adding that store dimension. Once you add that store dimension, you need to be careful, because you're going to get like million cell reports back. Again, time range, we've put fuzzy dates. Of course, you can change that to whatever you need to. And then stores, we would recommend kind of doing all stores without .com. .com versus brick and mortar reporting can be really, really messy. And we can answer questions about that later on, but it can be messy. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up there. But again, you'll see kind of this is what it looks like here. So it'll be that same item. So 7890 all the way down, but the different element here is across the stores. So, 7890 in Manhattan, Kansas did this much in POS quantity sales, so on and so forth. So this is where you can start to get information on like, what are your top selling stores? Are there pipelines for stores that you're worried about? Are there in-stock levels for stores that you need to push manual orders to, so on and so forth. So once you start getting into store detail level information, very, very tactical stuff. Usually your company summary is going to be like, how did we do last week? And how are we doing so far? And are there items that we should be, looking at, deleting, things like that? This is more tactical replenishment type data to make sure that, if I know what my top selling stores is the pipeline healthy for that store, so on and so forth. I think this is the last report that we're going to talk through and then kind of transfer into Q&A session. So the very last thing is, and again, you guys can obviously add columns to this, take columns away, just depending on the type of questions you want, but these are really good foundational reports for you to build off of. So the last one is your supplier performance scorecard. So this is something that Walmart buyers and RMs look at when they're basically trying to judge your business as a whole. So it has volume measures, so sales metrics, essentially profitability measures. So they care about what your margins are to them, and different departments have different margin requirements. And then also your asset efficiency measures. So do you have product that is moving the way it should be moving? So if it's like they expect it to be a high turn item, is it moving quickly? Or if it's supposed to be a high turn item, but it's staying idle on shelves, they want to know that. So how many dollars are they holding in inventory of your product if it's not selling, and things like that. So How you get that is basically, it's going to be one of the templates there. So I'm going to back up really quickly just so I can show you guys where that is. So it's going to be in scorecards and summaries. So if you just expand that folder, you should be able to see like I think it's like supplier performance scorecard. And then from there, essentially all you have to do is fill out, your 6-digit vendor number. So again, these are guidance for you guys. Generally speaking, when Walmart is looking at data, they're going to be looking at a 6-digit level. We do work with teams where buyers are like, I only want to see which makes sense, right? The buyers only want to see the performance for their items. So if you're a smaller supplier, maybe you're only working with one buyer, usually your 6-digit vendor number is going to be sufficient. If you're a larger company and you're working across multiple departments or multiple buyers, then you can filter it to that specific department or that specific buyer if you need to. And essentially, that's the only selection that needs to be made. You can't build or choose your columns or anything like that. And this is what that spit out is going to look like. So they'll give you data by last week, last month, the year, and then all of the different quarters. So just because of time, we're not going to go into all of these different metrics and what they mean. But essentially, anytime you go to a line review, I will say like over time, I know buyers have started to ask for this a little bit less because they're looking at things like OTIF, SQEP, and stuff like that. But generally speaking, you need to be prepared to talk to this if you're going into a line review with your buyer. They want to understand your performance. Are things going to plan? Are things better or worse than last year? Why, or why not? So on and so forth. So yeah, you guys can kind of see here, these are your warehouse metrics. So these are the sales performance that we talked about. So what are your ships at cost? How often are things turning? What is your cost on hand? What is your cost on order? So basically, how often is, how much inventory is Walmart holding for you guys? Here's your actual sales data. Here's what, the plan for you. Are you selling to the plan? Are you better or worse than last year? And then these are going to be your efficiency metrics. So what are your in-stocks? Again, what is your GMROI? They look at GMROI a lot. What are your margins? So on and so forth. Okay. So I know we covered like a lot very quickly. So definitely wanted to make sure that we had enough time for questions. If there are any, I know Melodie, you said a few people kind of submitted some before our webinar today. So happy to answer any of those questions if you guys have any.
Perfect. Yeah. So we have, it looks like 5-ish questions that were submitted before, and then a couple that have been submitted afterwards. So let's start with the ones that were submitted before.
Perfect.
And some of these you might have covered. And if you did, if you wouldn't mind summarizing it just to make sure that we definitely have answered the question. So
Sure.
How to pull item and store specific POS sales data for certain time periods.
Yeah, that is a great question. And that should get you. So once you guys get the slide deck, again, I would recommend, so item specific by store, by date. Is that right, Melodie? Just want to make sure that I'm covering. Okay, perfect. So I would utilize this recipe. So utilizing the store detail, you will be able to get, again, kind of this report. So it'll be item level information by store, and then you can set kind of the time range that you're looking for. So again, we've just done fiscal year date, very common way of looking at things. But if you guys are needing to look at it in a different way, you should be able to just change that to last week or last 4 weeks or whatever it is. But this exact query should get you that answer, item by store by date. Great question.
Awesome. And the next one is how to pull store item active combinations across multiple categories and products.
Great question. So item store. So what I have done in the past usually is essentially, again, kind of utilizing this recipe. So I'm glad we're getting these questions to show you guys the versatility of these recipes. So you guys will see here, current traded store item combo, current valid store item combo, which I didn't really talk about during the actual presentation. So to give you guys some context, when Walmart grants you business, essentially they will tell you how many stores they want you to be in. So they will basically be able to tell you, hey, for item A, you're in 500 stores, and for item B, you're in 1,000 stores, or whatever it is. So if you want the list of stores that you're in, what I would recommend is basically pulling this exact report, because what it's going to show you, you guys can see here again, by item, by store, it will show you whether you are traded and valid for that store or not. So if you are traded and valid for that store, you'll see a 1. If not, you'll see a 0. And then you can kind of sum up and pivot table it and all that good stuff. So what traded means is that Walmart has traded your item for the store, which I know I'm using the definition in the definition, but they have selected that store for your item to be in. So this is traded, comes from Walmart corporate. So Walmart corporate will say for item 7890, you will be in store 100. Now, why pulling traded and valid are important is because so stores actually have a little bit of autonomy to basically say, we don't want this item for whatever reason. So for example, let's just say they're sending ski goggles to a store in Pensacola, Florida, or whatever it is. You know, that store manager may be like, that doesn't make sense. We don't need ski goggles. We're going to turn off replenishment for that. Now, I will say 98% of the time, stores will just take whatever Walmart corporate kind of sends to them. But there will be situations where you are traded for that store, but not valid for that store, which means the store manager has chosen not to receive your product. So it's important to know. And again, these numbers are going to be within 3 to if even 5% is on the high end, I would say 2 to 3% of each other. If you have a high traded, very low valid, I would actually call that out to Walmart and be like, what's going on here? Why are stores choosing not to take our product? So on and so forth. So if you want to know which stores your items are in, you would utilize kind of this system. So you get your items, you get your current traded store item combination, and you'll basically be able to say, okay, item 7890 is in store. You know, you guys can see all ones all the way down. So it is in store 35, 54, 85, so on and so forth. If you just want to know how many stores you're in, you should be able, you can actually pull just using this particular recipe. So you can see a current traded store count. So you can see here, item 6860 is in 3,800 stores. So the company summary report will tell you how many stores you're in, and the store detail report will tell you which stores you're in. So, and again, cool thing about DSS is it's actually very flexible. This is not the only way to get that data, but this is probably the fast. If you guys aren't familiar with the process, this is going to be the fastest way to get you there. And then as you learn all the shortcuts, you'll be able to get data even faster than this. Any other questions, Mel?
We have quite a few. So how do you pull basic performance scorecards, which I know that we did have a little slide on that.
Yeah, I'll just show this just so you guys know. Basically, you're going to go into the supplier performance scorecard and again, pick whatever level of data that you need. Again, 6-digit vendor is going to be kind of your global performance, but you can also do it by buyer level if you want to have, if you have a buyer meeting, by department, so on and so forth. So, yep.
Perfect. And then which reports should a supply chain manager run on a regular cadence?
That is a very good question. And there are many, many ways to answer that question. So I want to try and keep it brief-ish just so we can make sure we get to other questions. And again, let me actually go ahead and show you guys our email addresses. So if you guys ever, want to carry on the conversation, please feel free to reach out to Mel and myself. We're always happy to answer those questions for you guys. But for supply chain manager, I would say the most common thing that you should really be looking at the very least on a weekly cadence. When I was kind of in the weeds doing this, I was pulling these reports daily. But you really want to understand your in-stocks. You really, really want to understand your item store pipelines. Because, if you have high performing items, but your pipeline is not sufficient, you want to be able to call that out to Walmart. So when you understanding kind of the division between top and bottom stores versus your pipeline, you'll understand, like, do you have idle inventory sitting somewhere? So if you are shipping, our example, ski goggles to Florida, that's just inventory that's most likely never going to move. So how can we make sure that you are putting inventory to the right place? So I would say in stock, non-negotiable, pipeline, non-negotiable. Other things as a supply chain manager that I would really look at are your forecast. So Walmart has two forecasts. They have GRS forecast and your supply plan. So your GRS forecast is what Walmart expects you to sell. So that scan. So, a consumer picks up a product, scans it at the, front of store. That is what they expect you to sell. Your supply plan is what Walmart expects to order from you. So your supply plan is built off of GRS. So it makes sense, right? They expect you to sell 100 units. They're going to say, hey, we need to order 120 units just in case there's plus minus or whatever it is. Yeah, GRS supply chain non-negotiable. One thing I would just caution for you guys is that your GRS forecast and your supply plan. So these are rolling metrics for Walmart. And what that means is you cannot get historical forecasts and you cannot get historical supply plan out of DSS. It gets purged every week. So best practices is basically make sure you're pulling that, saving that down somewhere by Walmart week usually, and it'll show you kind of, so supply plan I think goes 17 weeks out and GRS forecast goes 52 weeks out. So you want to make sure you understand what Walmart expects to order from you. And then OTIF is really going to be big for supply chain manager. So understanding your on time and in full percentages and things like that. And there's a lot of nuance. I know I'm throwing a lot of giant words at you. So again, if we can help answer those questions, check out Supplier Wiki. I think, Mel, we have some good articles on GRS forecasts and things like that. So feel free to start there, but obviously if there's any additional questions, definitely reach out to us and we'll be happy to answer.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, we have a couple of questions around supply plan. So since we're kind of talking about that, let's address it. So how does supply plan compare to the ladder plans?
That is a very good question. So ladder plan is an actual template that Walmart, so supply plan feeds into ladder plan. And the difference is supply plan is a pure Walmart input. So, supply plan is basically Walmart telling you, hey, for the next 17 weeks, I'm going to order 100 next week, 200 the week after, 50 the week after that, so on and so forth. The ladder plan is a little bit different because it requires your input as well, usually, because what Walmart utilizes the ladder plan for is to calculate how many weeks of supply they have on the supplier side. So they'll say, okay, over the next 17 weeks, I expect to order 1,000 units. And your job as a supplier is to say how many units you have at the warehouse, and then basically say, okay, we have sufficient inventory to make that happen, or we don't. So ladder plan, you can think of it as, so GRS is your foundational forecast, supply plan builds off of that, and ladder plan builds off of that. It's a very good question. And one pro tip I want to call it for supply plan, because we get these questions all the time, is people are like, Walmart said they were going to order 100, but they only ordered 50. And we made this much and that's not fair. And as a former supplier, I 100% agree, but how Walmart actually looks at the ladder plan, or supply plan, just so you guys know, is they look at it on a rolling 4 to 6 week basis. So for them, as long as the orders for the next 4 weeks equals the supply plan expected for the next 4 weeks, they consider that good. So they may order, let's just say over the next 4 weeks total, they want to order 400. Next week, they can order 400. And the next 3 weeks after that, order 0. They'll say, we did what we said we were going to do. So be aware of that, especially for those of you guys that are looking at weekly planning with your manufacturing facilities. They are not going to order to supply plan. Don't be surprised. Don't be mad about it. Look at how they ordering on the rolling 4 to 6 week period. And that is how they judge their accuracy. And they say if it's plus minus 20%, they consider that accurate. So just know that.
Fun little facts there.
Yeah, fun fact.
All right at time, but I would like to answer just one more question if we can.
Sure.
So how do I find out the return reason for every PO with a code 94 deduction? So that's the merchandise return to defective merchandise and retail link.
So that is a very good question. And I'm going to give kind of a half answer to that a little bit. So it really depends. So if it is a true PO level return, you should be able to get that kind of information. I want to say in APDP, which is a whole other portal, and we can talk about returns. I think, Melanie, don't we have a returns webinar coming up soon, actually? if I'm not mistaken.
We do. I
Yeah.
will put the link to that in the chat.
Okay, I promise that wasn't a paid question, but yes, I would recommend going to that returns webinar. But if it is an item, so what is more common for Walmart is you're going to get item level returns, and you can actually pull return data out of DSS. So let me see if we have that in the columns. We may or may not. And if not, I'm happy to share the query. We've got returns queries for you guys. Okay, it doesn't show up in the screenshot, but there will be a folder basically that says returns in it. And so I would recommend basically pulling your prime item number, your prime item description, and then I usually just select everything in the returns folder, and then it will tell you, and they'll tell you the number of returns that you've received, and then they will also tell you the reason why the returns happen. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that returns are coded. So if it is store level returns, they're coded by the store associate. And so you're kind of at their mercy. So they can return it because it's, they can code it as defective, even though it may not be defective. They can code it as, they basically are at their mercy. So I would kind of take returns, like look at the numbers, because you want to see how that compares to what you have in your supplier agreement when you're talking about deductions. But if you're really trying to get to the root cause of returns, like kind of take it with a grain of salt a little bit, because you're up to the mercy of the store associate, fortunately, unfortunately. But yeah, so hopefully all of that was helpful for you guys.
Yeah. We still have a lot of questions, but I know that we are at time. So we will try to answer your questions through email, but also feel free to email us. Stacy's email popped up on the screen a few minutes there, but mine did as well. And then we'll be following up with the recordings and the slide deck. So feel free just to reply to that email and we can help you out. All right. So we do have an in-person event. So if you guys are located in Northwest Arkansas, we are actually going to have a in-person event about how to actually go dispute AP deductions. That's going to be on January 31st up in Rogers, the Supply Chain Hall of Fame. So please join us at that. That is actually where our office is also located. So if you guys wanted to come stop by, check out our office, we're going to be right over there. So excited for that. That's at 7:30. And now we can kind of go ahead and jump in on a demo for Deductions Navigator Walmart. If you guys are interested and to see how we can help you with, SupplyPike can help you with disputing your Walmart deductions, we'd love to a breakdown of that. If this is where you jump off, thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Mel. And just wanted to echo Melody. If this is where you guys hop off, thanks for hanging out. I know it's a lot of data. It's like drinking out of a fire hose. So again, if we can help in any way, definitely let us know. But yeah, so wanted to show you guys really quickly kind of what we do here at SupplyPike. So if this is your first time coming to a webinar and you're like, this is cool information, what do these guys actually do? As I mentioned, we are a software company and we really focus kind of on revenue management. And so big part of that is deductions. So I know we got some questions on returns. That's one of the types of deductions that you can receive. Just so you guys know, again, if you're newer to the game, on average, Walmart will deduct about 6% off of an invoice from suppliers. We again work with over 400. That's the average that we've seen. And that 6%, sometimes that's a valid deduction. So you really did, not ship in full, so they aren't going to pay you in full. But many times is an invalid deduction. And how Walmart views that is basically you're guilty until proven innocent. They'll just take the money and then it is on you to go and dispute that and try and get that money back. And the suppliers that work with us have a over 90% win rate. And so we have helped win back, I think, like over $500 million for our suppliers. So as a big business, and we really believe in supporting you guys and helping you be the best suppliers you can be. So with that said, so this is Deductions Navigator. Essentially how this works is we are integrating directly with your supplier portals. So we support this again for Walmart, Target, Kroger, and Amazon. For this particular example, I'm just focusing on Walmart, but it will look very similar for all those other retailers as well. But on the dashboard page, we will show you information like how many deductions you've received, what is on the table for you to go after, what has been approved and is awaiting repayment, payment, what has actually been paid back, and kind of what your win rate looks like. I know this all feels like very basic information, but shockingly, or maybe not shockingly, it is actually really hard to get this type of data out of any retailer portal. So we kind of show you this and paint the story of your business for you so you understand, like, first, what is the size of the prize? Beyond that, we'll give you kind of insights into your data. So for example, where are you really bleeding the most? So for example, this demo company that we have, they're really hurting in code 25s, out of the $400,000 of deductions they've received, about $260,000 of that was for this code 25, which is usually an invoice timing problem. So this, most of the time for most suppliers, it's extremely low hanging fruit. If you change when you invoice, you can get rid of this problem completely. And so being able to kind of point that out for you guys, so you don't understand where you're bleeding, so you know what to do about it, is usually very, very powerful for the companies that we work with. We'll show you things like your deductions by amount. So, what are the sizes of deductions that you're receiving? What does it look like over time? These two at the bottom are also extremely powerful. So your deductions by item number, is there a particular item that is, again, causing that pain? Sometimes, let's just say, for example, item 9028 is only worth 10% of your sales, but costing you 25% of your deductions. That's good to know. Because I'm going to start talking to my team and say, what's going on here? How are we packaging this? How are we shipping this? So on and so forth. We'll show you information like your deductions by location. So are there particular DCs that are causing you any issues? If so, we've worked with teams that will literally tell their buyers or RMs, like, guys, DC 7026 is killing us. They're the only ones that can't seem to receive product correctly. You can actually work with your RMs to try and, again, mitigate these issues. So dashboard, super powerful, really great stuff. But really kind of the meat and potatoes of the app, so to speak, is on the deductions page. So again, if you guys are newer to the space, you can actually go back up to 2 years to go and dispute any deductions that you receive from Walmart. And again, keep in mind, they just take it first. It's on you to go and dispute it. And the process to fight deductions, very tedious. As you can imagine, think of it like going to court, right? So you have to have all of your data, all of your documents ready to go for every single deduction that you receive. And then Walmart review it and go, oh yeah, our bad, we should have paid you for this. And then they'll pay you back. So on average, it takes suppliers 25 to 30 minutes to get the data, do the research, hey, did we really short ship this? Was this really returned incorrectly? Whatever it is. And then basically go into Walmart's portal and then, key it in and send it off. Beauty of software is we can automate all of that. So you guys can kind of see here, we're pulling claim information, order information for you, any deductions history. We're taking it a step further by even telling you, is this a valid deduction or not a valid deduction? So we're kind of taking out all of that manual work for you. So kind of, question 1, did I get a deduction? Boom, we show it to you. Question 2, is it a valid deduction? Is it an invalid deduction? Boom, we do the business logic for you. Okay, so I know that it's an invalid deduction. Now I need to go get proof for that. We will actually automatically pull back your BOLs, your claims, your POs, your invoices, and things like that, and attach it to the deductions that you received for you. So just so you guys know, we've got integrations with over 100 different carriers and warehouses. So again, we can automatically pull that back for you. So you're not having to go, oh no, for PO 12345, now I've got to go log into my carrier portal, find it, download it, save it, attach it. We do all that work for you. And then from there, we've got business logic built in saying, hey, this is a code 22, it's invalid, you should fight it. Here's all the documents that you need. It's ready to go. So you don't even need to ask, well, what else am I missing? And you literally hit the submit dispute button and you're done. So yeah, we cut down what is usually a 15 to 20 minute process down to literally 1 click. And we even have the ability for you to kind of bulk dispute. So you can submit up to 100 at a time, or auto dispute. So again, because we're pulling all this data back for you automatically, if you don't even want to look at them, you don't even have to look at them. So we handle all of that for you. And yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff. Like I said, we've won back about $500 million for our supplier partners so far. And if this is a pain point for you guys, we would love to be able to do that for you as well. So I know I'm over. So last thing I'll say is we do offer a free business analysis. So if this looked interesting to you guys and you're like, man, I'm just curious to see what my data looks like, we can actually do all of that for you. Tell you how much Walmart has taken, show you what your most painful codes are, and basically get you all this information for free.
That is so helpful. Thank you so much, Stacy. I hope that this was helpful for everyone else as well. I think this is where we wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Stacy, for all of that amazing information that you gave us here today. And yeah, let's, oh, someone is asking, how can I get a review of the tool? That is a great question. I will send you a link right here. And feel free to just book some time and we'll go ahead and we will set up some time to get you a review of the tool. All right, perfect, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye, guys.